Our story began with a faint blue flame that slowly shrank and disappeared. As soon as it vanished, we saw a fat man lying on his grave. His name is Shin, our protagonist. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, causing one person to flee in fear, while the other person began crying tears of joy, saying, "He has come back to life." In a flash, his memories returned to him. He recalled his life on Earth, where he was the strongest hunter, an unbeatable force among thousands of S-rank hunters, all thanks to his powerful necromancer abilities. However, he was betrayed and murdered by his own friends and guild members. Upon awakening, he found himself trapped in the body of a fat pig. Now, gazing at his reflection in the mirror, stretching his cheeks, he wondered if the previous owner of this body spent his entire life just eating and sleeping. And how had he gone from being handsome to having this overweight piggy appearance? Laying on his bed, he pondered over the fact that the original owner of this piggy body was none other than the first young master, the notorious fool of the Baek-un clan. This morally corrupted individual was known for his obsession with food, women, and drinks, and he died like a fool. Now, he found himself reborn as a foolish pig in ancient China. He himself didn't know how it happened. The only clue he had was a peculiar stone he had swallowed before his death that he stole from the clan leader before his demise. And the leader's reaction after the incident now seemed to be a telling indicator. Perhaps that mysterious stone was the key to his unexpected resurrection. He was so fat that he wouldn't even sit on his own. But then something unexpected happened. Notifications flooded his vision, saying that an unexpected error had occurred, and his level would be reset to a mere level 1. Adding to his frustration, all of his abilities were now blocked. Upon hearing this, he couldn't help but feel immensely frustrated. Then, suddenly, he started smiling after realizing that in this world, there were no monsters or gates. On top of that, he was the first prince of this clan, so he could live his life peacefully, doing nothing but eating, sleeping, and enjoying a comfortable life. He could finally die of old age, free from the bloodshed and battles of his previous life. However, his moment of contentment was abruptly interrupted when the door to his room was flung open with powerful force. A man came storming in, shouting his name, while the protagonist's servant tried in vain to stop him. The intruder was Yu Jin, his younger brother. Ignoring the servant's pleas not to disturb the protagonist, Yu Jin delivered a powerful punch to the servant's face, sending him to his knees. He yelled, "How dare a mere servant touch me?" Seeing this, the protagonist walked past Yu Jin and knelt down to check on his servant. Yu Jin tried to say something, but the protagonist ignored him, whispering to his servant, "Who is this man?" His servant replied weakly, "He's Yu Jin, his half-brother." Then an old man entered the room, asking the protagonist if he had lost his memories after coming back from death, and asked Yu Jin to forgive the protagonist's rudeness, as he seemed to have lost his memories. This man was Woon San, an elder in the clan and Yu Jin's uncle. Then both of them started to make jokes about Shin, saying he was a pig and stupid. Now he had finally become a moron and started to move out from the room. Hearing this, Shin got angry, thinking that even after transmigrating, he couldn't get rid of this type of people. Suddenly, he jumped up high with his fat body and with a surge of energy, raising his right arm. His servant watched in shock as Shin delivered a devastating slap to Yu Jin's head, causing him to spit out. Yu Jin, in anger, his face turning red, shouted to Shin, asking what that was all about. Shin casually stated it was a slap and wondered if Yu Jin was stupid not to even understand something this simple. In anger, Yu Jin grabbed his sword, but his hands started to tremble as he felt the overwhelming aura of the protagonist. As fear set in, Yu Jin was left frozen, drenched in sweat. The elder, through telepathy, told Yu Jin not to make a commotion as they had an important matter at hand to do. They left Shin's room, saying that Shin had finally lost his mind now. Then, suddenly, he felt a surge of pain in his head, and a flood of memories washed over him. He saw in these memories that it was none other than Yu Jin who had poisoned him in his sleep. Yu Jin used to bully him terribly, and the worst part was that he discovered Yu Jin was sleeping with his own fiancée and witnessed all the other painful suffering. Snapping back to his senses, his servant looked at him with worry, asking if he was okay. Then, in a rush of realization, he understood that he had done something terribly wrong. Now, he sat in a corner of the room, hugging his knees and crying, realizing that Yu Jin had killed the previous owner of this body. He had just smacked his head, ensuring that Yu Jin Shin would definitely come to kill him again. He had wanted to live a peaceful life in this world, but if things continued this way, he would once again have to stain his hands with blood. As his servant asked once more if he was okay, Shin, still crying, said it was nothing and inquired if there was any place nearby where a large number of people had died. The scene then shifts to Yujin, who, in a fit of anger, smashes a vase while cursing Shin for daring to insult him. He wanted to kill Shin now, but the elder calmed Yujin down by reassuring him that he didn't have to worry about that, as he had already made preparations for it. At this, Yujin starts to laugh in a sinister manner. The scene then shifts to Shin, who is explaining that the destination he is going to is a forbidden place, a battlefield where a mega-war occurred hundreds of years ago and is perfect for his necromancer training. As soon as Shin reached the top of the mountain, panting heavily, clutching his knees, and cursing this damn body that can't even climb a mountain, he let out a joyful smile, saying it was worth the suffering as he could sense a lot of powerful undeads. He sat next to the glowing auras emanating from the ground, which were red, blue, and white in color. He explained that given his current level, he could only extract the white-colored spirit, which was the weakest. Placing his hand on the ground, he activated his death key extraction skill. A yellow aura began to rise from the ground and enter his body. As the process continued, he started to feel intense pain. He then explained that in the process of absorbing the undead spirit, he had to endure the pain and agony that the person had experienced at the time of their death. He then smiled and said, "This pain might affect a normal necromancer, but it's nothing to me." After a long few hours, the process was finally complete. The system notified him that he had successfully extracted mana from the dead. As a result, he leveled up to level 2, unlocked death summoning, and saw his strength, agility, vitality, and magic increase by 2. He then sat down on the ground, focusing on concentrating his mana. As he did so, blood started to trickle from his mouth, and he felt as if he was being pricked from inside 1,000,000 times. We see the mana trying to enter his heart, and after some intense effort, it succeeded. A blue mana ring formed around his heart, and he unlocked the skills Mana Control and Mana Heart. With a proud smile, he explained, "For a human to control mana, they need a storage place where they can store the mana for later use. Most mages store their mana in their brains, but for necromancers, this approach is harmful because the more magic they use, the more their minds get corrupted. That's why I, Shin, chose my heart as the mana storage." He stood up with a proud smile and extended his hand, whispering in a deep voice, "Arise!" A magical circle appeared, and from within, a skeleton armed with a sword emerged. The system notified him that he had summoned a low-rank skeleton. Shin observed his newly summoned skeleton, thinking that it wasn't ideal for combat due to his current low level. However, it could be useful for scouting. He lifted his finger, indicating the skeleton to perform an attack. The skeleton began to swing its sword, demonstrating its moves, but after just 4 swings, the skeleton crumbled. This left Shin perplexed. Soon he realized that his mana was depleting far quicker than he had expected. The amount of mana in this world wasn't even 1/10 of that on Earth. He let out a sigh, thinking that it was inevitable given this world lacked monsters and mana crystals. Without further delay, he placed his hand on the ground, activated his death key extraction skill, and continued to extract mana throughout the entire night. Before we proceed further into the video, it took a lot of time and effort to make this video, so if you haven't liked this video and subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you all for supporting this channel. Now let's continue with the video. A couple of days later, we see Shin trying to enter his room, which is now guarded. Frustrated by the situation, Shin surmises that it must be Yujin's doing. If only he had the stealth skill, he thought, he would have been able to strangle Yujin without being noticed. Shin then sneaks to the back of the house and attempts to enter his room through the window. He gets stuck halfway due to his large size, cursing this bulky body once again. After much struggle, he manages to squeeze through. Once inside, he spots a shadow in his dark room. Instinctively, he activates a mana circle for protection and instantly moves behind the shadow. Grabbing the shadow by the mouth, he is about to pierce its neck when he realizes that the shadow is none other than his own servant, Wang. Shin demanded, "What are you doing in my room without my permission, Wang?" Wang, still breathing heavily, quickly apologized but didn't offer any explanation. Shin started to suspect that Yujin might have sent Wang to spy on him. Wang then broke his silence and asked with a sad face, "Are you going outside again?" This question took Shin by surprise, and he responded, "What are you talking about? "I never leave my room!" Wang, however, insisted that he had seen Shin leaving the house every night. This revelation startled Shin, prompting Wang to quickly assure him that he hadn't told anyone else. An awkward silence filled the room. Shin realized that Wang didn't seem to be lying. Then, out of nowhere, Wang told Shin to follow him and started moving, which confused Shin even more. Wang led Shin to a run-down shed. Upon entering, he reassured Shin not to worry, explaining that the shed was rarely used and nobody would come there. Shin was still confused as Wang began moving a large box. Once the box was moved, a large hole leading outside the house was revealed. Wang told Shin that he could now go outside through this hole without the guards noticing him. He assured Shin he wouldn't ask about his whereabouts, but he only wanted one thing, for Shin to stay safe. Upon hearing this, Shin found himself in a state of doubt and confusion. If Yujin and the elder found out Wang had helped him, Wang wouldn't be able to avoid a grim fate. Shin couldn't help but wonder, was this a trap set up by Yujin? With a stern expression, Shin asked Wang if he understood the precarious situation Shin was in, where he couldn't trust anyone. However, Shin was willing to trust Wang for now, and asked if Wang would trust him in return. Wang's face lit up with a warm, happy expression. Suddenly, Shin's face took on a creepy look. His eyes widened, and he grabbed Wang's head. Wang was confused, but before he could say anything, Shin used his hypnosis spell. He then began to ask his questions. First, he asked about the relationship between Yujin and Wang. Wang, still trembling, replied that he had no real relationship with Yujin, except for the fact that whenever Yujin saw him, he would beat him up. Shin then asked the second question. Why was Wang following and helping him? Wang referred to Shin as his master and explained that Shin was an innocent and kind person who treated him well. He said they were like brothers from a young age. When his parents died, his stepmother and Yujin, his stepbrother, started to bully him. Frustrated, Shin used to beat Wang, but Wang endured it, thinking everything would be all right one day. When Shin died, Wang's world fell apart. Now that Shin was alive again, Wang didn't want to lose him a second time. Upon hearing this, Shin let out a smile and snapped his fingers, releasing the spell. As Wang was holding his head from the side effect of the spell, Shin was overcome with emotion. He thought about his previous life where everyone treated him like a monster and couldn't believe he had someone who trusted him so much in this new life. Then Shin left through the hole, assuring Wang not to worry and thanking him for his help. After training the entire night, Shin finally reached level 10 and his necromancy skill improved to rank D. He unlocked new skills: Bone Armor, Shadowbind, and Evil Eye. Now, he could summon 2 skeletons. However, he was disappointed to see that all of these were support skill. He started wondering when he would get his attack skills back. Now, at level 10, he could extract the blue energy. But as he observed this energy, he noticed something different. It was a mixture of mana and another mysterious energy, similar to the one he felt from Yujin and the Elder. His curiosity piqued. He decided to absorb this mysterious energy. He carefully extended his hand and began absorbing the energy. As it entered his body, he started to feel hot. His body, however, didn't reject the energy, and the process went smoothly. However, as soon as he tried to fuse this energy with the mana in his heart, it clashed, causing Shin intense pain. Blood started to come from his mouth, and it felt like his insides were being destroyed bit by bit, causing unimaginable pain. Now, Shin was sure he was going to die. He only had one option left, a risky one, but he had no other choice. Despite the immense pain, he smiled and began to concentrate the mysterious energy around his stomach. After hours of hellish pain, just as he was about to pass out, he finally succeeded. Then, the system notified him that he had successfully absorbed the mysterious energy, and a new energy storage had been formed in his stomach. After identifying the mysterious energy, the system informed him that this energy was called Ki, and he had absorbed a 30-day worth of it. Then an idea popped into his mind out of curiosity. First, he summoned a skeleton using his normal mana. Then he tried to summon another skeleton with the mysterious Ki energy. As soon as he tried, the Ki passed through his heart, got mixed with mana, and with the command, "Arise," he summoned a skeleton. What he saw left him speechless. A terrifying-looking skeleton had been summoned. Both of his summons were standing face-to-face with Shin in the middle observing them. He checked the first skeleton's stats, which were normal. But when he checked the stats of the skeleton he summoned using Ki, he was astounded. The stats were unimaginably high, even higher than Shin's own. Moreover, this skeleton could even use martial arts, though Ki would be consumed to maintain this skeleton. He decided to test his new summon's abilities. With a flick of his finger, both skeletons began to spar. The first skeleton, wielding an axe, charged at full speed, jumped high, and was about to hit the samurai skeleton. However, the samurai skeleton dodged the attack swiftly. The axe skeleton launched a barrage of attacks, but not a single one landed on the samurai skeleton, who used martial arts to dodge them all. Suddenly, the samurai's eyes glowed, and he dashed forward, disarming the axe skeleton with a single attack. Just as the samurai skeleton was about to finish off the axe skeleton, Shin stopped them and canceled both summons. Shin then opened his status window and noticed that they had been sparring for quite a while. However, the samurai had only consumed 10 units of ki, and a very small amount of mana was used by the axe skeleton. He wondered if this was because he had fused his mana with ki, but there was a problem. Mana would naturally regenerate within his body, but ki would not, and he would have to absorb the energy from the dead to regenerate his ki. This was not efficient, which meant he needed to learn martial arts, he thought, a bright smile spreading across his face. The next morning, we see Shin asking his servant where he could learn martial arts. Upon hearing this, Wang was shocked and worried. The man who had spent his entire life sleeping and eating now wanted to learn martial arts. He asked Shin what kind of martial arts he wanted to learn. With a serious expression, Shin asked if there was a martial art that could absorb an opponent's ki. Upon hearing this, Wang was scared and implored Shin to lower his voice. The art of absorbing an opponent's ki was considered a demonic martial art, and if someone heard Shin saying he wanted to learn it, he could get executed. He should never mention it again, Wang lectured. Meanwhile, Shin was contemplating that he didn't care whether it was a demonic martial art or not, he was going to learn it anyway. He gave Wang a sidelong glance, showing his determination. Shin yawned during Wang's lecture and said, "Enough of your lecture. Where can I learn martial arts? Does our mansion have a library?" Wang replied that there was a library, but before he could add more, Shin put his hand on Wang's shoulder and interrupted. "So, what are we waiting for?" With a sad face, Wang replied that he couldn't enter the martial arts library because servants were not allowed in. To comfort him, Shin confidently replied, "When I become the lord of the clan, I will teach you all types of martial arts. Don't be sad." He then began to move forward, and Wang bowed his head in gratitude. But then Shin stopped. He turned and asked Wang who the strongest person in his clan's history was. Wang replied that it was the founder of the Baek-un clan, Lord Yu Lang, who established the clan 200 years ago. He was Shin's great-great-grandfather. He reached the zenith superior rank and was called One-Man Army. Upon hearing this, Shin left the room and began to walk, deep in thought. According to his memory, the power ranking system started with the 3 RD rate being the lowest rank, then 2 Endu rate, followed by 1 Saint rate, Zenith, and finally the highest rank, Transcendent. The skeleton he had summoned was only 3 RD rate, yet it was incredibly strong. He continued to think with a worried expression, realizing he needed to find out how much of a power difference there was between a 3 RD rate and a Transcendent martial artist. People around him whispering about his changed behavior. They remarked that Shin wasn't frequenting bars or pursuing women as he used to. Another person responded, saying they should wait and watch as someone's behavior wouldn't change so drastically overnight. They were sure he would soon return to his old ways. Upon hearing the whispers, Shin didn't get mad. Instead, he smiled. After creating the second mana storage and absorbing ki, his senses had sharpened to the extent that he could hear their whispers clearly. He was also happy that his reputation was already so tarnished in everyone's eyes that it couldn't go any further down, meaning he could do whatever he wanted, and no one would say anything. After a while, he arrived at the library, which was guarded by 3 guards at the entrance. Seeing Shin approach, 2 of the guards wondered why the loser, Shin, was heading towards the library. The lead guard laughed mockingly and said, "What brings you here, young master?" Irritated, Shin replied, "Why does anyone come to a library? Obviously not to dance, right? I came to read some books." The mustached guard responded, "I don't think the book you're looking for is in the library." Shin shot back, "And how do you know what book I'm going to read?" The mustached guard then tauntingly suggested, "Aren't you looking for some hentai manga?" He began to laugh. As he laughed, he began to think excitedly about how if he insulted this pig and managed to shoo him away, Jin might even promote him or give him some rewards. Upon hearing the taunt, Shin let out a disappointed sigh and held his forehead. He commented that even in another world, there were these little worms interfering in his life without knowing their place. Shin then suddenly approached the mustached guard and asked him to address him as the son of a worm, then told him to move aside. The guard was confused as to why the usually unassertive Shin was behaving this way. As Shin attempted to pass the guards, the mustached guard grabbed Shin's shoulder, saying he couldn't go inside. In response, Shin gave him a deadly side-eyed look. His eyes started to glow blood red as he gave the guard a death stare. The guard broke out in a cold sweat, frozen on the spot. Shin removed the guard's hand from his shoulder and walked into the library. Meanwhile, the other two guards asked the mustached guard what had happened and why he wasn't responding. Still trembling, the mustached guard kept asking for help to save him. After seeing Shin's eyes, he realized those were not the eyes of a human, but of a tiger ready to devour its prey. The fear was so intense that he wet his pants. Still frozen on the spot, pee dripping slowly onto the ground, the two other guards couldn't comprehend what had happened. They grabbed the mustached guard and started dragging him out to take him to the clinic. One of the guards looked back at Shin, realizing that Shin was indeed a direct descendant of the Baek-un clan. The scene then shifts to a dark staircase, with an elder from the Baek-un clan descending into a hidden bunker. Inside, a body is seen covered in bandages, surrounded by several people dressed in red who bow to the elder. The elder reveals that Shin entered the martial arts library that day and continues to express his opinion that even if Shin were to read every martial arts book in the library, he would remain the same naive young master. This was precisely why they chose him for their plan. One of the men in red agreed, suggesting it might even be beneficial that Shin was attempting to learn martial arts. Even the slightest mistake during training could cause one's energy to backfire, potentially leading to death. He then extended his hand towards the mummified body, stating that their preparations were ready and no one would be able to save Shin now. The elder orders them to execute their plan tonight, then leaves the bunker with a satisfied smile on his face. The scene then transitions to two new guards stationed at the entrance of the library. The bald guard comments that Shin has been in the library all day, merely flipping through books. He expresses his concern that Shin might become mentally unstable if he attempts to learn martial arts incorrectly. The other guard reassures him that it's fine and they should just leave Shin to his devices. He adds that if Yujin were to discover they had assisted Shin, both of them could be executed. Moreover, the guard states that Shin wouldn't be able to learn any martial arts anyway, since all the martial arts books belonging to the Baek-un clan have either been destroyed or removed from the library. The only books that remain are adult comics. Inside the library, Shin is carefully reading a book. He hears everything the guards are saying and labeling them as idiots in his thoughts. Unlike others, Shin doesn't need to practice extensively to learn martial arts. With the help of the system, he can acquire knowledge just by reading books. He scanned through all the books in the library for hours, but unfortunately he couldn't find any decent martial arts books. The highest grade he found was a first grade, which was disappointingly of the lowest quality. Without any other options, Shin was about to settle for learning from the lower grade book when a small cart full of books bumped into his back. He turned around to see a young, cute girl. She became panicked upon seeing Shin standing before her and began to apologize tearfully. Shin asked her about the books in the cart she was pulling. Still nervous, she replied that they were all damaged books, and it was her duty to throw them in the basement and keep only the good books in the library. Shin asked her to lead him to where these damaged books were kept, hoping he might find something useful there. Unfortunately, even after searching for hours, he didn't find a single decent skill among them. The little girl then handed Shin another book, asking if it was okay to learn martial arts from these damaged books. After seeing the girl's kindness, Shin assured her it was okay, and that if she picked a good book, he would reward her with something good. Upon hearing this, she got really excited and after a while brought him a heavily damaged book. It looked so fragile it seemed it would crumble at the slightest touch. Despite its condition, Shin decided to check the book. To his surprise, the rank of the skill within the book was unknown. This could mean it's either a top-grade skill or a skill so low level that the system was unable to rank it. Shin patted the little girl on the head and assured her he would definitely give her a good treat. Then, he started to study the skill from the book. But as soon as he began, a green energy emerged from behind him and enveloped his entire body. The unknown energy started entering his body, and Shin initially panicked, unable to stop it. However, he quickly became confused when he realized it was not causing any harm to him. Suddenly, the system notified him that an unknown source had applied a curse of death on him, and this curse had begun to be absorbed by his body. This revelation immediately made him think of Yujin, who was the only one who wished for his death. Shin began laughing heartily, declaring his situation a great fortune. For a regular person, this curse energy would cause instant death, but for a necromancer like him, It was nothing less than a blessing. Without wasting any time, Shin began absorbing the cursed energy within his body. After some time, he managed to form his third mana circle. Sweating heavily, he announced that he had officially become a B-rank hunter. Shin continued to learn the skill from the book. After enduring intense pain for several hours, he finally mastered it. To his surprise, he discovered it was a transcendent-level skill. With this skill, he could now cultivate ki much faster than ordinary people. He also reached level 15 thanks to the curse energy, which delighted him. As he checked his status window and saw the morning light filtering in from the outside, he realized he had been studying the entire night. Suddenly, Wang burst through the door and urgently told Shin he needed to get ready quickly as someone important had come to see him. Shin asked who it was, and hesitantly, Wang revealed it was Shin's fiancée. The scene then shifts to Shin's fiancée. As she strolled through the town, the local townsfolk all gathered to get a glimpse of her. Comments about her beauty filled the air, with many agreeing that she was one of the top 3 most beautiful women in the entire kingdom. Suddenly, a man from the crowd stumbled and fell into the mud, splattering some onto Jeonmi's clothes. She shot him a deadly glare while her muscular guard prepared to attack the hapless man who was begging for mercy. However, Jeonmi stopped the guard, and with a kind face, she extended her hand to help the man up, asking if he was okay. She even handed him some money and gently advised him to take care. As she resumed her walk, the townsfolk began showering her with praises, remarking not just on her beauty but also her kind heart. However, inside, Jeonmi felt a wave of disgust washing over her. The mere touch of that man felt like a worm writhing on her skin, and she couldn't wait to change her clothes as soon as possible. In the grand meeting hall, Yu-jin, his uncle, and the vice lord sat, the air heavy with tension. Yu-jin glanced at the empty clan leader's chair, convinced it should be his. He pondered that the clan leader's position would soon be his, once the news of Shin's death was confirmed. However, a significant obstacle remained: the vice head, Do-jin, who was known for his unwavering loyalty to the clan leader, and by extension, to Shin. Suddenly the doors to the meeting hall opened, admitting Daeong, the second elder. He apologized for his tardiness, explaining that his son had woken up late. His son, however, retorted that he was on time, and it was his father who had overslept. Irritated, Daeong chastised his son for the chit-chat and took a seat beside the vice head. The pair began to converse, ignoring Yu-jin, who watched them with growing irritation. As the remaining elders filed into the room, only Shin's absence was noted. After waiting for some time, the first elder, Yu-jin's uncle, proposed that they should start the meeting. The vice head, however, insisted they wait for Shin. Yu-jin countered, asking why they should wait for a loser who was good for nothing. Suddenly, from behind them, a voice echoed throughout the room. "Who's the loser?" Shin made his grand entrance, causing Yu-jin and his uncle to gasp in surprise and fear. Questions started racing through Yu-jin's mind. How was Shin still alive? Had the curse failed? Shin casually dragged Wang by the hand and took a seat beside the vice lord. He then gestured for Wang to sit next to Do-jin. This was a move that shocked everyone, causing a mixture of fear and nervousness to grip Wang. The fourth elder, taken aback, shouted out, "Has Shin finally gone mad? To allow a mere servant to sit in this important meeting? This has never happened in the history of our clan." Wang nervously suggested to Shin that he should leave, but Shin, maintaining a serious expression, turned to the fourth elder and asked, "What seems to be the problem?" Infuriated, the fourth elder replied, "The problem, young master, is why the hell have you brought this dirty servant into our meeting? And you've even let him sit amongst us." Shin, exuding a powerful aura, retorted in a deep voice, "Do I need permission from you for what I am allowed to do or not?" The fourth elder recoiled, taken aback by Shin's intense gaze. Everyone else in the room was also shocked. This was not the Shin they knew. An awkward silence engulfed the room. Once again, Shin confronted the fourth elder. "So do I need your permission or not?" The fourth elder, both scared and nervous, stammered out, "No, you don't." There was no denying the tremble in his voice. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Yu-jin interjected, "It's fine. Shin is still unwell. He needs a servant nearby." The fourth elder, still nervous, agreed, suggesting that Shin's need for a servant stemmed from his ill health. Just then, Jeonmi arrived in the meeting hall, flanked by the muscular guard and several others. She offered a bow to the vice lord. However, her gesture was not received well. It was a custom for guards to stay outside during meetings, yet she had brought them in, suggesting a lack of trust and potentially a hostile intent. Yu-jin, seeing her, complimented her beauty, which made her blush. The flirtation was obvious to everyone in the room. Then, with a smirk, the muscular guard announced that from that day on, their clan would no longer be allies with the Baekun clan, and they would halt all trade. This sent shockwaves through the room. Daeyong, furious, slammed his hand onto the table and demanded to know how they could sever ties without any warning. The muscular guard explained that their clan leader no longer wished to associate with a third-class clan that lacked a clan leader. Yujin then jumped in, pretending to be distressed, claiming that all their problems were stemming from the absence of a clan leader, indirectly taunting Shin as it's all his fault. The muscular guard continued, saying that once they resolved their clan leader issue, they could consider cooperation again. The Vice Lord was now in a tight spot. The absence of a clan leader had weakened their clan, and they desperately needed the support of Gyeommi's clan. But the choice for the clan leader's position was between Yujin, who was not trusted, and Shin, who was deemed a loser. This was indeed a dire situation. The muscular guard then started speaking about the engagement between Shin and their young lady, but before he could finish his sentence, Shin interrupted him with a yawn. Announcing that he had something to say about the engagement, all eyes turned to Shin. Yujin thought Shin was about to cry and begged for them not to break off the engagement. Shin and Gyeom locked eyes. Then, with a casual air and one finger on his nose, Shin declared that he wished to break off the engagement. The entire room was shocked into silence. Gyeom, unable to contain her anger, fumed at the audacity of this loser rejecting her. How dare he? The scene then shifted to Shin in deep thought. As soon as Gyeom had walked into the room, a wave of pain had hit his head, triggering memories of Shin's past life, particularly of his first meeting with Gyeom. In their initial encounter, Gyeom had proposed to him with a sweet, innocent face, and those were some of the happiest memories of his life. However, things changed dramatically after their engagement was announced. Gyeom's attitude towards him hardened, and she started looking at him with disgust, referring to him as a revolting pig. She even warned him that she wouldn't have bothered with him if he hadn't been the next clan leader. Shin was instructed to pretend that they didn't know each other when they were alone or in less crowded places, or else she will cut Shin's little PE. And after the news of the clan leader's death, Gyeom started seeing Yujin, and Shin was left to watch them in secret and use his hands on his small PP while crying. Then, something unexpected happened. Shin saw a strange vision of Gyeom covered in blood, her clothes torn, and two guards leading her somewhere. In her room, several men lay naked, each clutching a handkerchief. Wow, she did some intense play there. Pretty wild. Anyway, Shin assumed this was not a memory of the past, as it hadn't happened yet, but rather a glimpse of the future. Confused, he pondered what was happening, deciding that he might find the answer if he continued to level up. Meanwhile, Shin noticed a slender man reflected in his gaze. This was why Shin decided to end the engagement. The scene in the room was tense, with Gyeom shaking in anger but saying nothing. Shin, with one finger in his ear, looked at Gyeom and jokingly asked why she wasn't answering. He teased, asking if she had some lingering attachment to him. Hearing this, the muscular guard shouted at Shin, demanding how he could dare to insult their young lady. Unexpectedly, the second elder of the clan came to Shin's defense, causing a heated argument to break out. Amidst the chaos, a confused Shin questioned the second elder. He pointed out that Gyeom's clan had come here with the intention of ending their engagement, and he'd simply said it first, so he couldn't understand why his agreement was causing such a problem. Yet again, the muscular guard erupted in anger, insisting it wasn't the same. He knew that if word got out that it was Shin, considered a loser, who had rejected Gyeom first, the head of their clan would definitely take his head off. The muscular guard, now known as Black Bear, was getting increasingly angry. He started emitting a powerful aura directed solely at Shin. This intense energy made it difficult for Wang to even breathe, yet Shin was totally unbothered. Confused and frustrated, Black Bear wondered how Shin, who he considered a loser, was able to withstand his aura. After all, he himself was a Zenith-level martial artist. Black Bear intensified his aura, aiming to overpower Shin, but unexpectedly, a white aura emerged from the vice head, nullifying Black Bear's aura. He warned Black Bear that he was willing to fight if this was a declaration of war. As he said this, the vice head was surrounded by an intense white aura, making his eyes glow. Black Bear, now nervous, realized that the vice head, despite his old age, was still one of the top 10 fighters in the entire kingdom. In an attempt to defuse the situation, Black Bear backtracked on his words. He claimed that he was not hostile towards the entire Baekun clan, but was merely angry because Shin had insulted the young miss. However, the vice head was not convinced. He knew Black Bear's actions had been more than just a display of anger. He'd tried to kill Shin. In the midst of all this, Yujin suggested a different approach. He remarked that due to his stupid elder brother, the entire Baekun clan was on the brink of losing their alliance with Jiam's clan. If they were to elect a new clan leader, they could secure the alliance once more. He continued to say that since Shin had instigated the conflict, he should settle the grudge with Black Bear in a duel. This suggestion shocked both the vice head and the second elder, but to Yujin, it was a perfect plan to get rid of Shin. Thinking to himself, he imagined that an unexpected accident could occur during the duel. Black Bear, intrigued by the idea, agreed that it was a good solution. But hearing this, Wang objected loudly, as it doesn't make any sense. How can a duel between young master who hasn't even learned martial arts and a zenith martial artist be fair? The vice leader and the second elder echoed his sentiments, criticizing Black Bear for his shameless acceptance of the duel request. Black Bear, smirking tauntingly, retorted, "Is the future clan leader such a coward that he'll shirk his responsibility?" His tone turned serious as he added, he could spare Shin if he were to beg on his knees in front of the young lady right now. Given her pure heart, she might even forgive Shin. On hearing this, Shin stood up from his chair without uttering a single word. He started to walk towards Black Bear and Jiam. Yujin watched, joyously expecting to see Shin humiliated as he begged in front of everyone. Wang, the second elder and the vice leader, tried to stop Shin, but he didn't pause. Coming close to Black Bear and Jiam, he surprised everyone by simply walking past them. His calm demeanor left everyone in the room in shock. He continued to walk, striding confidently towards the outdoor martial arts stadium. Shin stretched his arms, displaying an air of annoyance. "I was so tired of all your pointless chatter," he said, as his back turned towards them. Then he turned around, his as everyone watched him, their faces full of confusion as they tried to make sense of what was happening. With a serious expression, Shin gestured towards the stadium and declared, "Let's fight. I've been itching to kick some ass." After some time, the entire town began rushing towards the stadium, buzzing with excitement at the prospect of the duel between Shin and Jiam's clan. In the middle of the chaos, the son of the second elder argued that they couldn't allow the duel to proceed, fearing for Shin's safety. Not a single guard from Jiam's clan was less than a third-class martial artist, and they couldn't risk Shin being seriously injured. However, the vice leader disagreed. He argued that this issue had now become public and they couldn't back down. If they stopped the duel now, Shin's reputation would be reduced to nothing more than a cowardly loser. The second elder agreed, worriedly acknowledging that if Shin backed out now, his reputation would be ruined, and the clan leader's position would undoubtedly fall to Yujin. Yet, the vice leader reassured them. Radiating a serious aura, he confidently stated that they shouldn't worry. If the situation got out of hand, he would step in to save Shin. As Shin was stretching and yawning nonchalantly, the second elder despaired, thinking that the winner had been decided even before the fight began. He worried about the consequences, knowing that if Shin lost, his position as the future leader was at stake. Suddenly, Shin began to stride towards the stadium, catching the attention of everyone around him. Black Bear watched him go, a strange smile playing on his lips. Wang, on the other hand, looked on with growing tension etched on his face. Jiam, oblivious to their reactions, held her head high, feigning concern in front of the crowd. However, Shin noticed her act and couldn't help but comment. "Your acting skills are indeed amazing. You're fit to be an opera actor," he stated sarcastically, causing a stir among the onlookers. Black Bear barked at Shin to shut up, but Vice Leader was quick to remind Black Bear about not using martial arts during the duel. Black Bear retorted that he didn't need to be told. He then chose one of his underlings to represent him in the fight. This move enraged Shin. Pointing a finger at Black Bear with a fiery look, he declared, "I don't want to fight these low-level minions. My opponent is you, Black Bear." This statement left everyone shocked. Bristling at Shin's words, Black Bear retorted that Shin should pick an opponent that matched his power level. Shin countered by insinuating that Black Bear was admitting to being weaker than him. The situation threatened to spiral out of control when the referee finally started the match. In his rage, Black Bear commanded his subordinate through telepathy to kill Shin. The underling lunged at Shin, throwing a powerful punch that Shin easily evaded, much to everyone's shock. The underling then launched into a barrage of punches, all of which Shin skillfully dodged. Frustrated, Black Bear yelled at his underling for playing around and told him to fight properly. From the underling's perspective, he was already giving his all. Left with no choice, he activated his martial arts skills and punched Shin with all his might. The onlookers grew furious, and Vice Leader readied himself to intervene and save Shin. However, something unexpected happened. Instead of Shin, it was the underling who ended up crying out in pain. He held his hand, which had fractured. Yujin pondered if Shin had hidden a steel plate under his clothes, while the first elder declared that Shin hadn't done such a thing. He speculated that Shin must have learned some kind of martial arts. Black Bear accused Shin of cheating by using martial arts, but the crowd quickly refuted his claims, pointing out that it was Black Bear's underling who used martial arts first. This silenced Black Bear, while Shin seemed to be bewildered by the situation. He hadn't used any martial arts, he had simply activated his F-rank defense skill. To defuse the situation, Black Bear publicly apologized and admitted their defeat. However, he then loudly announced that the duel wasn't over. He proceeded to the stage, stating that it was Shin who had originally suggested the duel, so now it was his turn to fight. Hearing this, the Vice Leader grew angry, questioning Black Bear's intentions. But Black Bear argued that the situation had changed now that Shin had shown his martial arts prowess, making the duel fair. The second elder and Vice Leader were against the continuation of the duel and voiced their objections. Breaking the tension, Shin assured the Vice Leader it was all right and addressed Black Bear, teasingly calling him a teddy bear. He told Black Bear that he talked too much and urged him to hurry as he was eager to kick his sweet little ass. Black Bear stepped onto the stage, standing face to face with Shin. With a stern expression, he warned Shin that he would regret his decision. Shin, in a casual tone, replied that oddly enough, everyone who has ever told him that ended up defeated. Annoyed, Black Bear dashed towards Shin, who managed to dodge the attack with ease. Black Bear then launched a barrage of attacks, throwing punches and kicks at Shin. However, Shin kept dodging all of them, surprising both Black Bear and the spectators. Shin even admitted that Black Bear was indeed faster, and his power and speed were comparable to a D-rank hunter's, but he found it to be nothing impressive. Suddenly, Black Bear swung a devastating sidekick towards Shin's mouth. The Vice Leader grew anxious as it was a dangerous move, but Shin effortlessly blocked it with his wrist. This surprised Black Bear even more. He launched another series of punches and kicks, but Shin dodged them all again, causing Black Bear to question how Shin was managing to do so. As the crowd watched in amazement, some spectators began to question Black Bear's abilities, wondering if he really was a 1 Saint grade martial artist, since he couldn't even defeat Shin, who they regarded as a loser. Enraged by these comments, Black Bear dashed even faster towards Shin, intending to grab him in anger. However, Shin countered with a punch, his hand glowing with a deathly aura. The punch sent Black Bear flying backward, tumbling across the ground like a rolling ball. Shin, raising one hand in a victory pose, stood tall, and the crowd broke into cheers. The crowd continued to cheer while Black Bear, shocked and confused, touched his mouth and found he was missing a tooth. His face turned red in rage, veins bulging as if they would burst any second. He immediately activated his martial arts skills and rushed towards Shin at lightning speed, aiming a punch at Shin's face. The punch caused a huge spark of light, blinding everyone's vision, including Guillaume's. When her vision returned, she was stunned to see Black Bear flying through the air and crashing to the ground before her. She turned her gaze to find it was the Vice Elder who had blocked the attack. The Vice Elder angrily questioned what all of the Baekun clan members were doing. He exclaimed that the Guillaume clan had tried to kill their young master, and they should ready themselves for battle. As everyone prepared to attack, Guillaume's anger boiled over. She scornfully referred to the Baekun clan members as bugs and shouted in fury at their audacity to raise their swords at her. Hearing this, the Baekun clan members exchanged glances and commented on Guillaume's fearsome temper. They admitted that just her look alone could kill a man and acknowledged that she had finally shown her true colors. The second elder demanded that the Guillaume clan hand over Black Bear as he had attempted to murder the young master. But before he could finish his sentence, the sight of Black Bear's head flying through the air silenced him. Someone had beheaded Black Bear. The man responsible was a middle-aged figure with razor-like claws on his hand, the infamous Blood Claw, the top martial artist of the Geum clan, a high-ranking Zenith-level practitioner. The sight of him sent waves of fear through everyone, including the vice leader. He himself was a mid-tier Zenith-level practitioner and knew he couldn't defeat Bloodclaw. Despite this, the vice leader was determined to protect Shin at any cost. He turned to Shin, instructing him to stay behind him, promising to protect him. But Shin, with an annoyed look, responded, "Who is protecting who? I can protect myself. You should worry about yourself." The vice leader was taken aback by Shin's words. Meanwhile, amidst the tense atmosphere, Bloodclaw licked the blood of Black Bear from his claws, a wicked smile spreading across his face. Bloodclaw emanated an intense aura as he declared his readiness for war. However, Yujin stepped in, preventing the second elder from escalating the conflict with Bloodclaw. He argued that there seemed to be a misunderstanding at play. "The Geum clan isn't entirely at fault," Yujin reasoned, much to everyone's surprise. "They've already killed Black Bear, the one who caused the trouble in the first place. We shouldn't start a war over such a small matter." Internally, though, Yujin was in turmoil. If anything were to happen to Geum or any of her clan members, they could expose his secret alliance with Geum. The second elder, on the other hand, wasn't swayed by Yujin's words. Raising his voice even louder, he declared adamantly, "I won't let them go so easily." In response to the second elder's outburst, Shin called out from behind, "Let them go!" Everyone in the vicinity was shocked, turning their heads to look at him in surprise. Shin calmly continued, "This should be enough of a lesson for them." His words sent another wave of shock through the crowd. He had nearly lost his life at the hands of the Geum clan, yet he remained calm and forgiving. Furthermore, when had he become so proficient in martial arts? The change in him was undeniable, and everyone present started to look at Shin with newfound admiration. Meanwhile, Yujin was boiling with rage. Instead of him, Shin was becoming the center of attention, and this irked him greatly. In a fit of anger, Geum pointed her finger towards Shin and yelled, "I'll definitely have my revenge!" With that, she stormed off. Left behind, Shin allowed a wicked smile to curl his lips. In a low whisper, he muttered a single word, "Arise." The scene then shifted to a deserted jungle. Two groups of people, both dressed in black, appeared. One was Yujin's group, and the other was Bloodclaw's. Yujin shouted at Bloodclaw, "How could our plan have gone so wrong?" Bloodclaw replied apologetically, "We could not have predicted that things would turn out this way, but we plan to rectify our mistake by killing Shin tonight." Hearing this, Yujin was taken aback, but also felt a sense of relief. "I will clear the guards," he promised. "You had better make sure this plan goes off without a hitch. Once I become the clan leader, I'll reward you greatly." As they parted ways, a shadowy creature emerged from the ground and began moving through the jungle. The scene shifted to Wang, who was frantically pleading with Shin to meet the vice leader. Despite Wang's insistent pleas, Shin simply refused to go. Wang continued to press the issue, reminding Shin that the vice leader had saved his life by blocking a deadly attack from the Black Bear. Shin, looking annoyed, thought to himself that even if the vice leader hadn't intervened, he would have easily blocked that pathetic attack. The atmosphere became somber as Wang confessed his fear, saying that his heart had sunk when Shin had decided to fight the beast known as Black Bear. He was terrified of losing Shin again. Shin found himself moved by Wang's words. He reflected on his life back on Earth, where his own blood brother had been eager to stab a blade into his heart. Now, here was someone whose heart was filled with worry about losing him. He realized that this life, with all its challenges and oddities, wasn't that bad after all. Shin found himself apologizing to Wang for making him worry. Wang looked surprised and asked why Shin was saying sorry to a mere servant. Shin simply replied that Wang wasn't just a servant to him. Wang thanked Shin and told him to rest, reminding him once more to visit the vice leader so he wouldn't feel offended. With that, Wang left the room. As soon as Wang was out of sight, the atmosphere in the room became denser. Shin lifted his hand and the shadowy creature that they had seen in the jungle appeared from the door and moved towards Shin. Shin asked the shadow to show him what it had seen. The shadow turned into something like a projector, showing Shin everything that had happened in the jungle. We learned that this shadow was one of Shin's summons, a shadow parasite, capable of recording what it had seen. Now that Shin knew that they were going to attack, he had no time to waste. His first thought was to go straight to them and end them all, but he stopped himself. If it were only Yujin, it would be a different matter, but he didn't know how many of them would be coming to kill him. He realized that he needed to make some preparations. He moved towards his window, looked out into the distance, and said, "It seems like the time to visit the grave has finally come." In the next scene, we see Shin standing in the Death Valley. He summons a skeleton wielding a spear by uttering the word, "Arise." It wasn't just any skeleton, though. It was the same one he had summoned using his ki, the one that knew martial arts. With its power equivalent to a first-rate martial artist and stats all above 100, it was a formidable summon. Moreover, Shin had managed to gather more than 10 of these powerful skeletons. This feat had only been made possible due to the transcendent skill he had discovered in the library, allowing him to accumulate ki rapidly. Shin checked his status window. He was now at level 22. All his stats were above 150, and he had collected a variety of different types of kai, totaling more than 5,000 in number. This had officially advanced him to a low-level zenith martial artist. With these advancements, he had finally obtained a close combat ability with his necromancy, a feat that had been impossible in his previous life. After hours of searching, Shin finally found a grave separated from the others, radiating a potent aura. The name inscribed on the tombstone revealed that this was the grave of the first leader, the founder of the Baek-un clan. He was known to be the strongest swordsman in history. Excitement surged through Shin as he raised his hand and commanded, "Arise!" The key started to be rapidly absorbed, and a bright light emanated from the grave. However, after some time, the summoning process halted. Shin received a notification from the system stating that the being he was attempting to summon was too powerful and could not be summoned because his necromancy wasn't high level enough. The rank required to summon this being was represented by a question mark. Shin was confused. His necromancy was at B rank, which he thought should be sufficient to summon a transcendent level undead. What was this about a question mark? The highest rank was supposed to be S rank. Did he need to exceed even that to summon this being? He came to the realization that Yulong, the first clan leader, must have been exceptionally powerful. Finding no other option, Shin decided to move forward, leaving behind the unsummoned grave of the mighty leader. As Shin moved forward, his mind filled with thoughts of needing to find a zenith-level undead quickly to deal with the blood claw. Suddenly, he was startled by a sharp aura emanating from a grave behind him. As he turned around, his eyes widened at the sight of a red summoning circle appearing in front of the grave. A flurry of system notifications informed him that an undead was summoning itself, despite Shin's low skill level, because it wanted to be summoned. This shocking and confusing situation left Shin nervous. He saw the undead sitting on his grave in a cool pose, one hand on his sword, exuding a terrifying aura. As Shin checked the skeleton's status, he saw that its level was 30, with all stats above 200 and more than 5,000 ki. The system notified him that the skeleton's power was reduced due to Shin's low necromancer level, but even so, it was significantly stronger than Shin. Then, something even more shocking occurred. Without any command, the skeleton began to move towards him. Suddenly, Shin felt a thought from the skeleton infiltrate his mind. "This Shin is an interesting lad," the skeleton seemed to convey. This left Shin even more confused and nervous. As the skeleton approached even closer, it reached out and grabbed Shin's chest, trying to make love with him, signaling its choice to follow him. Then suddenly Shin felt a surge of energy flow through his body and quickly realized the skeleton was trying to do something. The system chimed in, notifying him that the skeleton warrior was attempting to transfer the 12 Swords of the Thundercloud God technique to him. Asked if he would accept it, Shin, albeit surprised, replied with a smile and acceptance. The scene then shifts to the Bloodclaw group, who are marching together with the aim of killing Shin. After a while, they stop, suggesting they should rest. However, Jium, from behind, starts shouting that they don't have time to rest. She insists they keep marching because she wants to witness Shin's painful death. In her anger, she kicks one of her underlings, yelling at him to move. Bloodclaw tries to explain to Jium, addressing her as Young Miss, that their soldiers need to rest or they won't be able to fight upon reaching their destination. Jium, looking annoyed, retorts, "How much energy does it take to kill that loser? Are you Bloodclaws so weak?" Bloodclaw, now angry, shows his claws and sternly suggests they end this useless chatter and move again. Hearing this, all the subordinates feel disheartened as they must continue their journey without resting. Then, suddenly, everyone feels a terrifying aura. Bloodclaw dashes toward Jaeum to protect her just as a spear flies toward them, piercing the chest of a man standing beside Jaeum and Bloodclaw. The spear still lodged in his chest and his hand trembling, the man dies on the spot. Bloodclaw suddenly noticed something strange. The spears were made of bones. Then, without warning, a barrage of bone spears launched towards them, instantly killing many. Bloodclaw, while deflecting the bone spears coming towards him and trying to protect Guillaume, shouted in anger at his subordinates, "Don't act like idiots! Wrap your bodies and swords with your kai and deflect the spears!" Following his command, they managed to deflect the rest of the spears, but not before losing nearly half of their army, with many others injured. Frustrated and angered, Bloodclaw shouted, demanding whoever was attacking from the shadows to step forward and show their face. Shin finally revealed himself, responding, "Who is talking about hiding? The ones who came in secret to assassinate me?" Bloodclaw was taken aback, wondering how it was possible. Shin then dropped another bombshell, stating, "Do you think I'm an idiot? That if you wear a mask, I wouldn't recognize you?" He addressed him directly as Bloodclaw and revealed the woman in the back as Jaeum. Bloodclaw, trying to divert the conversation from the topic of assassination, claimed they were just carrying out a secret mission. Shin retorted confidently, "Yes, and that mission was to kill me, wasn't it?" Hearing this, Guillaume began to shout that Eugene had betrayed them and lured them here. Now that Shin had come to them, they should seize the opportunity to kill him. On the other hand, Bloodclaw was deep in thought, suspecting that he'd been baited by both brothers. He wondered if Shin and Eugene were working together, even though they seemed to be at odds. He couldn't act rashly, for many spears had already been launched their way, indicating Shin wasn't alone. But he'd been scanning the area for a while and hadn't sensed anyone other than Shin. He wondered if this was a ploy or if Shin was mentally ill to come here alone, knowing they intended to kill him. Eventually, he concluded that Shin must have set up some sort of attack mechanism before their arrival. This suggested that Shin was definitely alone. With a confident posture, raising both his hands upward, Bloodclaw ordered his subordinates to attack and kill Shin in the most painful way possible. Shin, on the other hand, was excited. "It feels like ages since I've seen some bloodshed," he declared as Bloodclaw's subordinates marched towards him. Shin then activated his bone spear skill, a rank B skill, and once again launched a barrage of bone spears towards them. Many were killed and injured, and as they were being skewered one by one, panic ensued among the ranks. "It's not martial arts, it's demonic arts!" they cried out in fear. Shin simply replied, "If you're scared by just this, then I haven't even started yet," aiming to further intimidate them. However, internally, he was grappling with the issue that using a rank B skill consumed a lot of mana. He had to use it from the start because all of Bloodclaw's subordinates were first-grade martial artists. Seeing this, Bloodclaw became even angrier. He screamed and emitted a fierce aura, deflecting all the bone spears at once. He scoffed, "These are just childish tricks. We only need to kill one little rat." Noticing that the bone spears had stopped coming, they concluded that Shin must have run out of energy. Confidence surged through them again as they prepared to launch another attack, starting to march once more. But then, with a confident expression, Shin replied, "Who says that I am alone?" He extended his hand forward and commanded, "Arise!" Something terrifying emerged in front of the entire group. They began to cry in fear, their bodies trembling as a horde of terrifying-looking skeletons started to rise from the ground. The skeletons gave them a deathly stare, sending shivers down their spines. "Now you can say it's a demonic art," Shin commented, standing alongside his skeleton soldiers, arms folded, a triumphant smile on his face. As he stared at the skeleton army, even Bloodclaw started to sweat, pondering the kind of demonic art this was. Despite being a killer his entire life, his body froze in fear because of these skeletons. When one of his subordinates tried to flee, Bloodclaw killed him on the spot, shouting that if anyone else dared to flee, he would kill them himself. Left without a choice, the group yelled that the enemies were just bones and started marching towards Shin again. The skeleton soldiers also began marching towards the group, and a fierce fight commenced. Seeing this, Shin commented, "So they have chosen death." From behind Shin, a skeleton wielding a bow emerged, launching an attack that mercilessly killed the man standing near Bloodclaw. Seeing this, Bloodclaw realized something strange. Each and every skeleton was displaying the power of first-grade martial arts. He understood that assisting his subordinates would put him in danger, and that if he could kill Shin, who was controlling them, the problem would be solved. He instantly dashed towards Shin, charging his attack, but before his attack could even land, he was struck from behind. The blow was so strong it split the ground in half. It was none other than the first clan leader's attack. Panicked, scared, and covered in sweat, Bloodclaw realized he couldn't kill Shin and had fallen into Shin's trap. Shin had made it seem like he was defenseless and lured him closer. Bloodclaw addressed Shin as the reincarnation of a demon. As the skeletons surrounded Bloodclaw, piercing their spears into his body one by one, he didn't scream, but laughed instead. After some time, when everyone had died, Shin summoned all the assassins, including Bloodclaw, and he will check them later as he had more pressing matters at hand. Shin started moving forward, causing Gium to feel as though she might wet herself with fear. Shin came close to Gium and removed her face mask, and trembling, Gium addressed Shin as darling, claiming she had been brainwashed by Yu-Jin, and that was why she was acting this way. Her voice was cute and polite. Her expression became even more innocent as she started crying, saying she would never think of killing Shin, not even in her dreams, as they were lovers. Overflowing with cuteness and politeness, she suggested they could start over, insisting it wasn't too late. Shin thought to himself that if she were born on Earth, she definitely could have become a top Korean actor. Seeing her chance, Gium took out a hidden weapon and sprayed some cursed gas onto Shin's face, showing her true colors as she sneered, "A pig will always be a pig." To her surprise, the curse didn't affect Shin, leaving her in shock. From the cursed mist, Shin lifted his middle finger and forced it into her puss, and pressed it against her chest, stating, "One thing I really love about this world is that I don't have to worry about the law when I kill someone." He pointed his finger at Gium, who stood still in confusion. Then a surge of pain coursed through her body. Writhing in pain, she clutched her chest and fell to the ground. Slowly and painfully, she began to die. Her body began to rot slowly, revealing that Shin had placed a curse on her. As her face started to melt, Shin placed a name tag beside her that read Gium and began to move forward, declaring that it would be Yujin's turn next. So, the episode ends here. If you would like me to continue the series, please subscribe and comment part 2. Thank you for watching.